Well, first off, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us across the country. And I just picked up on seeing a couple of our friends in Israel as well. So really appreciate people jumping across all time zones. Thank you. A big warm welcome to all of you who are joining also the KETOS Cooler Chat for the first time. So really appreciate it. I'm Meena Sankaran. I'm the founder and CEO of KETOS. Water is such a quintessential resource that affects everyone around the globe. And you must have seen we played a little bit of a snippet team video in terms of how we embrace the global perspective of really being there for any language, anywhere, and having the availability of clean water for every human being and any being on this planet should have the level of access to water that we experience in the United States. And at KETOS, we see solving both water efficiency and water safety as sort of this yin and yang to having clean water available to you. You can't solve one and not the other. And the experts will tell you, and a lot of statistics will tell you that 14% of water is lost and just leaks, and that's treated water, which is around 1 trillion gallons of water in the United States. So this is not a third world country problem. KETOS is a water intelligence company. We believe that by enabling our customers truly to have data-driven insights every day in real time can transform how they operate and work with water as a mission critical resource. So when you, what we're gonna do today is I'm gonna just give you a couple of very brief things about our solution and then really dive into some exciting Q&A over here in the next couple of minutes. So first off, on this solution, what we're showing you is our KETOS Shield, a flagship product that's primarily driven to build on focus on water quality monitoring. So here's a singular modular system that really is a solution for addressing your water quality contaminants, a variety of them, and a water efficiency solution that is inline and basically allowing you to understand quantitative metrics. So you have both quantitative and qualitative metrics in real time that's not just being sensed, but sensed, collected, transmitted, and analyzed, and for you to use that data. I truly believe that having a vertically integrated solution is extremely important for customers. And as part of being vertically integrated, what you just see here is you can't think about siloed solutions anymore. You can't walk in and have a variety of handheld probes. You're walking into utilities which have some online analyzers. Some things are done in lab. Utilities, industrial customers, everybody, they have a wealth of data, but they're not really fully aligned with how to leverage that data and make that data work for them. And part of what KETOS really accomplishes is how do you give them a fully vertically integrated solution so that they can be the expert operator, we can be the technologist, really enabling them, helping them at every step of the way. And part of this is how do you also build a business model around it and not just the technology aspect of it? So that's always been a keen point in terms of, the innovation is one aspect, but how do you also build a business model for it? So ultimately, for us as KETOS, we believe it's a multidisciplinary intersection of robotic automation with material science, with data science, with IoT for water, that captures the essence of why you need to have a non-myopic view of solving a problem like water. So as you think about, water quality and water efficiency and all these aspects, one of the most important pieces is, well, how do you come into a market and have very strategic partners? And what I'm very excited to share today is a partner that has taken a very different angle on not just technology advancement, but also how do you carry through that on a financing front. And based on all the COVID and all the market uncertainty this year, I'm sure many of you have had these conversations. Utilities, even if they're on a different path or in different stages of their digital transformation, they're really struggling with either funding or maybe budget cuts or some aspect of funding in terms of how they allocate it towards data strategy or digitization or automation or building a digital twin. So, how do you come in as a technology company, helping them move the needle on the technology aspect without, having a lot of compromise in time for them adopting that technology? And this can apply not just municipality, but industrial and other customers as well. So, Water Advisory Group has truly been very innovative in that aspect of how they look at both combining technology, but also financing pieces. They specialize over 30 years in the water industry, as well as 40 years from a financing perspective. And today, to join me in having this discussion is Kevin Kinder, who has been an industry veteran with 30 plus years of experience across industrial, municipal, utilities, and even the food markets of manufacturing and bottling. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Kevin Kinder. Kevin, great to have you here today. Why don't we start with, one of my first questions to you would be, what sets Water Advisory Group sort of apart in terms of how you've thought about both technology and financing? And maybe that's a great place to start, and then we'll go from there.
Thanks, Meena, and thank you for having me today. And thank you to all the attendees, and I'm honored to be here today. To specifically speak to your question, being in the industry for 32 years, as you all know, the water and wastewater industry is a very provincial industry. It takes time for things to change within the industry. We saw that trend change in the last 4 to 5 years, where things are changing at an exponential rate, where in the past it was slow to move. So we saw an opportunity to put a triad of services together. And what we've done is, with the company, we offer traditional consulting services, water and wastewater, but we also wanted to be an innovative technology provider with technologies that complement one another. And then we brought in the financing piece, especially today in the climate that we're in with the pandemic. Those traditional financing sources have been turned upside down, especially on the municipal side, but also on the industrial side as well. People are waiting for companies to make the first move, so to speak. So I think with our triad of services and technologies, that we're able to bridge that gap to get movement in the marketplace. And that being said, the KETOS technology, when we came across it and learned more about it and learned more about your team, we were so excited that we were able to form this partnership, and having KETOS at the forefront of our technology offerings. The digital aspect of the water and wastewater world is growing exponentially, and we wanted to be at the forefront of that. And certainly with your technologies, we're honored to be a member of the team.
Great, thank you. And when you look at, so, for KETOS, we have fundamentally made the model of the business innovation in a way that there is no capital purchase. Like, fundamentally, what I have seen is there's a huge component when you break down the costs across operations and not look at it just as an instrument, which is a mistake that a lot of people tend to make. You are looking at costs that are associated with lab, costs that are associated extensively with labor, of a person driving, grabbing a sample, prepping a sample, bringing that back, and also the amount of time that they're waiting. So there's a huge wait time, and what does that cost to your business? And then the cost associated with materials, because you're having guess estimates based on parameters or constituents you can measure. And so that becomes a guess estimate. So how much are you overspending on your materials per month? And ultimately, how do you combine all this in terms of your efficiency within the organization? So what do you find in terms of your experience in the industry and having, position KETOS Shield as an example to start with, and talking about it within the industrial entities? What are you seeing? What is resonating? What are you seeing resistance to? How is that working for you in terms of KETOS Shield? What's unique there?
I think the real-time collection and sharing of the data is a key plus for let's take the industrial sector. They want to use Shield not only on the compliance side, but more importantly, on the operational side, because they can fit the Shield into multiple parts of their facility, not only production side, but also treatment side. And like I said, the real-time collection and sharing of the data and the sheer number of data points for them, they can trend certain aspects, not only in their production side, but in the water and wastewater side. They can see trends where it will save them, not only on the traditional, sampling aspect of all the things that you had brought up, but also chemical addition. If they can see these trends, they can hit a problem before it hits the treatment system. That's very, very, that's one thing that the market has told us, that facilities are very interested in this.
Got it. Yeah, that's great to hear. There's always validation when we're talking to them, but it's always important to see how industry experts and others are also seeing it. When you were when you're partnering with someone, as you're looking at, you've been a trusted advisor to so many of these customers. So you're obviously picky about how you evaluate and how you partner with different technologies. Can you maybe point out 3 things or 3 aspects of KETOS, whether it was technology, whether it was business model? What were 3 things that kind of drew you to think this could be a good partnership that would really add value to the customer at the end of the day?
Certainly. You have to understand, being in the industry for 32 years, where I started and where technology is today, they're light years apart. So I had that provincial feeling that, okay, you go get a certain hawk product or a certain product from a named brand to test a certain parameter. You got another piece of equipment to test another parameter. So it was just the cost of doing business to be able to test some of these parameters, operationally. When I initially saw not only again, I'm going to go back to this, the real-time collection and sharing of data and the sheer number of data points that can be collected was a huge thing for me, and I looked at it as a potential customer, because that's basically what I was. So that was a real key point for me, where that your technology could replace this antiquated way of operational tools within a system. And the list of the contaminants too. It hits so many targets within so many different market segments that it kind of, that's why we kept the conversation going. That's why, we are where we are now. So those 2 to 3 points, I mean, that hit home with me as a traditional wastewater professional. So.
No, very helpful. And I do see some questions coming up, and I'll get to it in a minute of answering those questions. And Kevin, we can definitely tag team on that. one other question for you is, you know, as you're thinking about the different customers you've talked to, can you maybe share a couple of use cases that popped up in those conversations? Target verticals we all understand. You know, we've hit industrial, we've hit municipalities, and I know KETOS is also actively working in the agriculture space. So those are three definitely large target verticals with, you know, several sub verticals that we can address. But any top of mind use cases that come for you that you would love to share here?
Certainly, and I may already state some that you had stated, but specifically in the municipal space, it is a perfect fit for a well field situation in the water space. Um, as you all know, it takes manpower, and there's no real time data collection like Shield can do in that space. Over and above that, we have found very high interest in health systems around the country, as far as monitoring the influent water to health campuses that have to be monitored very regularly, and that water has to be treated in many cases before it hits the system itself. There's a large health system in where I live in Northeast Ohio that's extremely interested in this because they treat their water past the city parameters just because of who they are. I've also seen in the production side in the food and beverage industry, specifically aseptic beverage packagers. Where their water has to meet certain standards before it could be mixed, you know, to make their product. We've also seen very high interest in the energy sector, and that's a very broad sector, but we found very high interest in that sector as well.
No, thank you for sharing. And maybe this is a good time to kind of take one of the questions here that I have. Can you offer one or two recent successful use cases where municipal customers have adopted KETOS hardware and SaaS to develop actionable insights and offer details about cost savings? Sure. So instead of answering and typing it on a Q&A, I think it'll be helpful for all attendees as well. So one, a very publicly shared reference point is definitely Southern Nevada Water Authority. And what I would suggest about them is, as a municipality, a lot of folks are looking at, there are multiple locations where you could put it in. So Shield could go in the treatment side of municipality plants where you're thinking about water reuse and how potable is the water post-recycling. The place where SNWA used it is at an arsenic removal plant where you're thinking about arsenic and chromium and nitrates and others. So it was in close proximity to Lake Mead. And so there are different ways to understand it. And as Kevin pointed, the wells have been a very strong niche for us in terms of municipalities, because a lot of utilities, depending on their level of adoption within that data journey, they have made already a state certified lab in their utility within their presence, or could already have a certain amount of investment in certain probes and certain single parameter analyzers that they've bought from legacy vendors. But what they don't have is these wells that get monitored across the board, and they could have a coverage of 1,000 square mile facilities. They have desal plans. There could also be arsenic removal plans. There could be issues with nitrification. So those are types of the problems that have been great sort of initial issues that cities have jumped on it right away in terms of starting off with that point, realizing the value of it, and then that translating back into their treatment plant. So for utilities to adopt a technology, that seems to be a very easy path, because it's more of path of least resistance for them to get it going. And the business model has also been very helpful, because they're not going back and asking for capital budgets, and they're able to apply this on an operational expense aspect of it. Anything else you want to add to the municipality aspect, Kevin, before we go to another question here?
No, I think you covered it very well.
Thank you. And so there's a couple other cities we're talking to, at least 40 plus utilities at the moment, different types of use cases. There's a lot of overlap. We've also had a very interesting use case where there are mergers of certain utilities, and as part of the merger or the purchase or the acquisition happening, we're being used in terms of legal liability to verify the water quality of another utility while a certain merger is happening. So a very interesting use case that I hadn't thought about. We were so focused on the source monitoring and effluent, between the influent and effluent, and process optimization within a plant. But this was another very interesting use case that has come up in recent times. Another question here is, how do the Shield results compare to the lab? One that we get very commonly: how close is Shield to lab results, and does the device have drift? Great question. And, this is something Kevin and I have talked about as well when we, are meeting customers. In general, our philosophy is about 4 A's, as I call it. 4 A's of water accountability, or 4 A's of monitoring that doesn't exist. One is, how do you make the system fully autonomous? How do you make the system accurate? Which I mean, when I say accurate, it's lab precision accuracy. Third is, how do you provide those advanced analytics? And fourth, how do you make it affordable? And this is what KETOS Shield tries to achieve and has been successful through its deployments in the last 3.5 years. So from a comparison, we are plus or minus 10% of a NELAC certified lab. And we really hold our heavy metals in very high regard, in the sense that unless we have a very strong percentage confidence of a heavy metal like lead, copper, arsenic, chromium, manganese, any of them not achieving that plus or minus 10% precision compared to a lab, we don't launch that heavy metal into the product. So, Kevin mentioned modularity. So as we're adding new parameters, we just added selenium. We're adding iron in the next 30 days. Mercury and zinc will be available before end of the year. So as these parameters are getting added, they're continuously getting optimized with the single purpose that they cannot miss the mark of our specificity and sensitivity to go as low as we can. And most of our metals are around 1 ppb, 2 ppb level, but we're constantly optimizing them and trying to make sure we're able to get to the levels we want far below EPA. So hopefully that answered your question. And happy to dive a lot into why our system does not have a drift, and we have 0% data degradation, which is part of all of our proprietary patented mechanism that we've built, because you see that all the time in optical probes in the field, that there's a complete data degradation over a period of time, which is why a lot of customers use us. So, and Kevin, here's a question for you that would be great. How, if you had to give feedback to customers who are considering KETOS Shield or considering any of the new technologies as part of data strategy, how would they go about thinking about it? How would they assess it? There's so much noise in the market. It's a great question.
I would buy a shield. That was the first thing I would do. It is very cloudy out there. And this goes back to a point that I made. We are having discussions about technology today that we haven't had before. So people are asking these questions that really haven't been. I was in a meeting today. They have a model where they had to go to regulatory agencies for information. The regulatory agencies had never been asked these questions before. So basically, do research, reach out to, existing companies that have some sort of data space that they're using. Ask questions. That's how I learn. And because again, this is a new aspect of doing business in our space. So just do some personal research and reach out to companies like KETOS. There's a lot out there, but not as much as really when you deep dive it, there's really nobody, and this was a point where I wanted to get connected with KETOS. No one in the marketplace is doing what KETOS is doing today. That's not to mention 6 months from now or a year from now. So really do your homework on this. Stay away from my advice, and this is what I did. I didn't want to talk to the usual players in the space, so to speak. I wanted to see the new players. I wanted to research them and see what the similarities were and the differences were. And when I did that, KETOS stood above and beyond anything that I saw. And I did a lot of research.
No, thank you. One thing I would say for anyone listening as a customer, as a user, a good way to kind of think about this in the future is that the days of having a single vendor approach in your strategy are gone. So I think the first thing you need to do is think about your priorities first of how you want your architecture to look like, and have a very holistic architecture around it. So any vendor, any technology service provider that comes in that is not interoperable with your existing systems, that is not willing to integrate with other technologies that you already have an investment in or thinking ahead, those are very big red flags. You want to make sure whatever solution comes in whatever niche they provide, you're going to have a combination of different types of solutions, whether it's remediation, whether it's treatment, whether it's monitoring. They have to be able to interoperate and integrate and work together so that you truly have a robust platform that actually mines your data and presents your data that's actionable for you. So it's almost like putting yourself in the forefront, not the vendor, and not because of any specific one technology, but figuring out how do you get that best of breed and really bring that solution together so that you get the ultimate outcome that you need as an industrial operator or a municipality. That's always been how data centers are operated. And in the past, coming from 17 years of being in the data center space, that's how we looked at data centers. And I think it's very important that water sector also looks at that architecture in a really holistic way, rather than thinking about it as a very point solution of one legacy or one vendor kind of approach. I know we're coming up on the time. One last question that I can take here. There is, somebody said one of the challenges is acceptance by the regulatory agency. So there's different perspectives around it. So we are EPA compliant, and the question is how many utilities or industrial customers want to use it for compliance or permitting purpose versus process optimization. Today, the percentage I would say is more 80-20. We hope that percentage flips around or even increases. And we are working with several, both federal as well as state regulatory agencies. Some states, and I can at least say 2 states right now, are accepting our reports directly from our customer system. So they can upload it from our unit, which is great, and when they can. So that is an opportunity for conversation and saying, if the data is acceptable, you go through the process, the methods are comparable and EPA compliant, what does it take? What does it mean for the future for some of these customers? And it's really a collaboration, working with the regulatory agency and thinking about it as there's always a place for a lab, but where are the places where remotely operated monitoring systems can also add value? And I think that balance is to be achieved only by working with regulatory experts. So I think that's how we see it. Kevin, any last words and thoughts on how you see for compliance and non-compliance purposes, and how do you look at that love the questions coming in. So thank you all the attendees here. So Kevin, any last thoughts on that?
2 points. And number one, the no-brainer for this technology is especially in the water and wastewater space, from a treatment aspect, is an operational tool, no doubt about it. But the exciting part about this, to speak to your point, is the compliance issue, and I get asked that a lot. We get asked that a lot. Can I use these results on my MORs? And right now, and you're certainly working on that. And so as that progresses, it's only going to be more attractive to a wider audience. Right. So that's, the market is telling us the direction that you're taking the company. So.
Awesome. No, thank you. Just as a housekeeping rule for everybody, all the participants, I have at least 15 or so unanswered questions. So I'm going to make sure that we do a follow-up with an FAQ of all the questions and answer them and send it over to you. So I really appreciate you asking. We are at time. You think 30 minutes is a lot, but it can go real quick. Really appreciate it. Please stay in touch. Ping me. My email is meena@ketos.co, so that we can engage one-on-one on specifically your use case and a deeper conversation. Also, if funding is a concern, we can also figure out how some of the financing models that are similar to the bond structures that Kevin and his group have created, we can talk about that as well in detail. Your time is precious, and we really appreciate your presence with us. So thank you again, and have a great rest of the day, everyone. Cheers. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.